Money Arata. The Bitcoin network has a very high energy consumption, even higher than Argentina's. Well, but so what? What can we say based only on this information? Did you know that Google, Netflix, Facebook, YouTube, and even TikTok also consume more energy than Argentina? Here are some things that also have similar energy usage rates: private jets, Christmas lights, cruise ships, and even laundry drying machines. Now, what does that mean? Can we say that Bitcoin uses too much energy? What is exactly too much? Too much compared to what? Could it be that all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt around Bitcoin's energy consumption is actually some psyops, a psychological warfare strategy used to keep you away from cryptocurrencies and then make you dependent on government-made and controlled money? This is not financial advice. Please read the full disclaimer before proceeding. Bitcoin is useless and it is just wasting energy. Technology as a whole uses energy, from Google to laundry drying machines, and this includes Bitcoin. And that is why it is a logical reason and mistake to criticize only Bitcoin for using energy more than Argentina. One could argue that at least Google is an organized database. It is helping us to have access to information. Netflix and TikTok are great for entertainment. That Facebook connects people and YouTube offers some educational content. Similarly, private jets are also useful for politicians and the mobility of some billionaires. Christmas lights make the city more beautiful. Cruise ships are good for tourism, and laundry drying machines are used for drying clothes. However, Bitcoin is viewed as a useless invention by a lot of people because credit cards already exist for instant payments. That is why those people say it is a useless network and is just a waste of energy to run it. This argument has a flaw. Bitcoin's purpose is far greater than just being a cheap instant payment network that you can use to buy your coffee. Bitcoin is doing something way more revolutionary than just providing a payment tool. Bitcoin is giving back to the people the control over their own money, decreasing the power of the government of devaluing your net worth. Bitcoin is programmed to issue only a limited number of units, therefore protecting you from inflation and guaranteeing you your right to property. Bitcoin is liberating people from censorship and confiscation and guaranteeing the right to freedom. There are only two types of people that find Bitcoin useful. Number one, the people who are currently living in places with high inflation rates or in dictatorships, as well as number two, people who live in stable places, probably you. The first group of people who live in countries with inflation rates higher than 10% a year desperately need a way to protect their savings, and Bitcoin serves that purpose. There are immigrant workers in rich countries that need to send part of their income to the rest of their family in their home country. If those workers would be using traditional services like MoneyGram or Western Union for that, the fees would be too expensive. Plus, there is also the risk of their family members getting mugged after withdrawing the money, going back home. Those risks don't exist with Bitcoin. Besides that, in places with confiscation or risk of theft, Bitcoin is a type of money that the government has no control over. Many immigrants that are leaving places in the middle of armed conflict by seeking refuge abroad, they say that Bitcoin was essential for them to sell their houses and possessions and keep that money until they managed to find a new home in another country in a safe way. Also, some countries that repress freedom of speech, they can lock your bank account over something that you may say or some ideas that you have. However, maybe you are in the second group of people, the majority of people, and you currently live in a relatively politically stable or economically stable country. Still, you need to find a way to protect yourself from inflation, especially now that the interest rates are falling. This means that there are no easy alternatives for you to keep your money safe and also to preserve your purchasing power. And since Bitcoin offers a solid solution to millions of people around the world, we cannot say it is worthless. It is not easy to be judging whether which one is more useful, to consume the same amount of electricity, either to keep running the Bitcoin network or Christmas lights, or private jets, or laundry drying machines, or TikTok challenges. Each one of these things meets the needs of different groups. There is a fact that we cannot ignore. Millions of people around the world depend on Bitcoin to transfer money in a safe way. And those people are way more numerous than the number of people who are traveling on cruise ships or in private jets. Bitcoin represents only 0.1% of the world's electricity consumption, and most of it is renewable energy. Some politicians accuse Bitcoin of being a threat to the environment, saying that it also speeds up global warming. After all, power generation accounts for more than a fourth of the 5 billion tons of greenhouse gases that humanity releases into the atmosphere each year. However, it is a little confusing to see politicians criticizing Bitcoin for consuming a lot of energy, while the same politicians keep using their private jets, which proportionally have the same energy consumption and usage as Bitcoin, and are used by way less people. This reinforces the theory that politicians who criticize Bitcoin are either misinformed, so they're acting without malicious intentions, or they're simply acting with bad intentions. They're trying to keep the power over money exclusively in the hands of the government, acting out of malicious intent. However, we should think beyond Bitcoin's total energy consumption. We should also think and understand more about the quality of the energy that is being used up by the Bitcoin network. Let's now take a closer look to prevent us from falling to the trap set by some hysterical clickbait journalism. When a sensationalist newspaper says that Bitcoin has a higher energy consumption than Argentina, we can get a little bit startled. Let's first take that number into perspective. The whole world uses around 170,000 terawatt hour per year. Additionally, the Bitcoin network consumes 140 terawatt hours per year at maximum capacity. And this means that the Bitcoin network's energy usage at maximum represents 0.1% of the world's energy consumption. Furthermore, not all the energy that is used by Bitcoin emits greenhouse gases that contribute to the climate change. A considerable part of the energy comes from renewable energy sources. According to recent information, Bitcoin miners use a percentage of sustainable energy that is way higher than any other country. For example, take a look at the sustainable energy leader such as Germany. They use 48.9% as renewable energy, and Bitcoin miners use from 56 to 67%. Bitcoin uses energy that would be wasted. Another mistake is to think that Bitcoin is using energy that could be used for other purposes. In 2017, there was an alarmist and poorly researched article predicting that Bitcoin's energy consumption would get so high that by the year 2020, Bitcoin would consume all the energy on the planet. Well, 2020 went by and nobody ran out of energy because of Bitcoin. And there is a reason for that, which is regulated by the laws of the free market. Most of Bitcoin's energy usage is consumed by the miners, and they use state-of-the-art computers to solve complex math equations. In return, they gain some Bitcoins, and this means that miners have got to pay for their electricity consumption. And if they buy expensive electricity, they could risk financial loss and even going bankrupt. So in order to make Bitcoin mining affordable, the miners cannot buy energy at the same price as us, as domestic users, or even as industrial users who get it cheaper. And the cheapest energy of all is the energy that otherwise would go to waste, and therefore would result in no gains to the electrical company. That is why miners need to search around the world for good purchase contracts of energy that is otherwise being wasted. For example, access electricity from hydropower plants during rainy seasons. In dry seasons, the electricity generated by the hydropower plants becomes too expensive, so then the miners simply stop their operations during that time of the year because of the higher costs. However, during the rainy seasons, there is more energy production and then higher waste rates. Another energy source that is often wasted is natural gas. In the oil extraction facilities, there is usually the presence of gas as well, and when the quantity of gas is enough, it makes the construction of pipelines possible. However, when there is low amounts of gas, that gas just gets burned or released into the atmosphere. In other words, it is wasted. Bitcoin can also use those energy sources. Bitcoin uses energy to build a reliable, decentralized network that makes you have real power over your own money. In the earlier episodes, we already explained how Bitcoin works. In short words, Bitcoin is a digital currency that runs in a decentralized network. This process of generating new bitcoins is what miners do today, as we talked about previously. It is true that Bitcoin's decentralized network uses more energy than if it would be a centralized network, because in a centralized network, you can always optimize the machines and reach more efficiency. The problem, however, is that there is always a central power, someone who is in control of your money in a centralized network. And Bitcoin's purpose is to be the exact opposite of that. And to function in a decentralized way, the Bitcoin network relies on nodes and miners. And we already saw that the miners have to optimize their machines as much as possible as they can to buy the cheapest electricity possible in order to make a profit. Renewable energy is the cheapest of all. However, it is not always available near the cities, the urban centers, where it could be consumed. For example, those cities are not always located in places where there is a lot of wind for the eolic energy. It is not always in places near water for the hydroelectric energy, or in very sunny places for solar power. You don't have a lot of cities in the middle of the desert. Having the possibility of settling down on those locations is one of the advantages of the miners. Besides, renewable energy doesn't usually provide power in a constant, maintained way because there's not always wind, there's not always strong sunlight in those places. Even hydroelectric dams have the rationing periods in the dry seasons. However, domestic and industrial users, they need a constant flow of electricity. That is why today's world is still dependent on the polluting and non-renewable energy sources. However, Bitcoin miners are ready to be way more environment friendly, because they can just go beyond just using electricity that would be wasted. They could even operate exclusively on renewable energy. The miners can simply deactivate, they can reduce their activities whenever there is a low supply of renewable energy. All of this explains how there is a great economic pressure for the miners to pay for their electricity in an efficient way. By receiving rewards in Bitcoin, the miners have an incentive, an economic incentive, to help to keep the Bitcoin network secure. If they try to sabotage the network, they will simply spend money with the electricity bills and will not receive Bitcoins as a reward. Simply put, this is the idea of the proof of work protocol. You can read the source containing all the technical details that is used for this episode. I'll leave the link here. Because of all of that, we can correctly say that the Bitcoin network is extremely secure. There is a great amount of computing power that is ensuring the security. Anyone can try to copy the Bitcoin network and give it a different name, but it is very unlikely that it will be able to attract the amount of computing power that makes the network secure. In fact, other attempts to create alternative cryptocurrencies have failed precisely because they were not able to recreate that same level of security. Real investors don't put money on the long term into any cryptocurrency, and the cryptocurrencies that don't invest in computing power are more vulnerable to attacks and to the theft of money. In short words, the energy consumed by the Bitcoin network is very well used in order to guarantee network security and, by consequence, all the fundamental rights that are based on solid money, decentralized money. Because only decentralized money allows people to have the right to property, the right to security, the right for freedom, the right to freedom of speech. Other currencies, even the traditional currencies, also consume electricity, and not in a way that is efficient as Bitcoin. There was a moment when talking about Bitcoin's energy consumption became a trend. But nobody bothered to ask how much the traditional currencies consume. How much electricity do traditional currencies such as the dollar, the euro, the yen are using? How much electricity has to be used to produce paper notes and mint some coins, or to run the banking system, or to connect credit card operators? Probably nobody did this type of calculation because it is not for their interests of the real power holders to be giving arguments to those who want to have currency and money that is less controlled by the state and more private cryptocurrencies. In addition to that, official currencies use electricity in a more traditional way. Mints are ready to issue paper notes and create metal coins in a determined quantity using machines and generators that are brought, taking into account into consideration the exact quantity. So if all of a sudden people would use less paper notes and less physical coins, it is not so simple to reduce the production capacity. What will happen is that those machines will stay idle and be low efficient as a result. This does not happen in the Bitcoin network. Since everything is 100% digital, the machinery and the electricity that is used in Bitcoin is efficient, it is elegant. It gets higher when there is enough demand, and it also gets lower when there isn't. Bitcoin miners need to be extremely efficient to make a profit. And because of that, the machines that are used in the process, they get maximum optimization, which includes making use of the electricity that would otherwise be wasted. Besides, miners look around the world for the cheapest electricity possible, in places where the supply is usually way higher than the demand. And they are always looking for innovations in order to keep the machines efficient and the energy as cheap as possible. So when you come across news advertising that Bitcoin consumes more energy than Argentina, try to understand what are the interests behind the people making those affirmations in a hysterical and catastrophic way, without bothering to present to you true data and the technical explanation behind all of that, as we just did here. Could it be that it is a news website just fishing for some clicks? Or someone who doesn't want to lose power if people would adopt Bitcoin? A good way to seek the truth is simply looking at the data. And now you already learned that Bitcoin's energy consumption at its maximum represents 0.1% of the world's electricity consumption, and that at least a third of that is produced by renewable energy sources. You could even go beyond that. Now you can learn how Bitcoin currently guarantees the fundamental rights of dozens of millions of users, many of them living in places that are desperately in need for human rights protection. Knowledge is power. Searching for data and then truly analyzing it, as we did it right here, it gives you clarity, therefore protecting you from being manipulated and allowing you to make your own decisions. Bitcoin is the currency of the future, and you shouldn't miss out on this revolution because of some environmental dilemma that is fake. Despite the myth that Bitcoin consumes too much electricity and speeds up climate change, the real data shows that Bitcoin represents actually, at maximum, only 0.1% of the world's electricity consumption, and a considerable part of that comes from renewable sources, and mostly energy that would otherwise be wasted. So if you care about the environment, and if you want to invest in a currency that is reliable and independent from government intervention, I suggest you keep studying about Bitcoin. I invite you to keep learning about Bitcoin by checking out the link arata.se/Bitcoin class.